We have to learn to let go and allow life to happen through us without any judgments, without any preconceived notions, just allowing life to be what it is.
We choose between the left and right, the ups and downs, the darkness or the light. We're finding who we are.
There's only one reform in life. When you and I stop living from our heads, you and I are here for one very solid reason, and that is to learn to be loving.
We're finding our way together, just you and me.
Namaste.
Have you ever considered that what you say may not be what you mean? We're going to be looking at Buddha's teaching on right speech. Come aspire with us. When you hear the name Buddha, do you picture a statue of a bald, fat man in your favorite Chinese restaurant? Maybe he is laughing, or maybe he is serene. Do you believe his life was fact or fiction? Buddha means the enlightened one. The man we call Buddha was Siddhartha Gautama, and he lived only 500 years before Jesus. Today, Buddha's teachings are the basis for one of the world's greatest religions with more than 180 million followers. Despite his father's efforts to protect him, Siddhartha had been exposed to the inevitable facts of life. On 3 outings with his coachman, they had come upon illness, old age, and death. On a 4th outing, Siddhartha met a man dressed in a yellow robe with his head shaved. When questioned, the monk explained that he had left the comforts of his home and family to lead a religious life devoted to contemplation and doing good deeds. Having seen the futility of worldly life, Siddhartha made up his mind. He too would renounce his family and possessions. It was time for him to begin the spiritual journey to find nirvana, liberation. That night, taking every precaution not to wake the household, Siddhartha left the palace with his squire. Once outside the walls, Siddhartha cut off his long tresses and handed over the sword, all of his clothes and ornaments to the squire, and bid him farewell. Although this was a common practice during this period in Indian culture, it was strange that someone of Siddhartha's wealth and position would be willing to give up everything. Now stripped of his riches, Siddhartha set off alone. I was talking to a friend recently, and he was saying to me how he thought in his philosophy that we are not condemned for the things that we say as much as the things that we do. Well, I disagree with both of those kind of thoughts, that we are condemned at all for what we say or do. There's so much more to right speech. In the traditional form of metaphysics that we hear people talk about all the time, they talk about how we should say only loving and positive things, and they might interpret Buddha's teachings of right speech on the way we speak verbally with our lips. But let me just say to you right out on this program, how one speaks with their lips, their verbal utterances, is of no consequence one way or the other in our life at all. Right speech, as Buddha was teaching, has nothing at all to do with what I say to you. You have to be very sensitive inside. And if you're very sensitive inside, you will hear that something is constantly being spoken. It's a silent language, but people hear it. Let me tell you what right speech is. It's what we say inwardly. It's the whole tone and texture of our being, of our consciousness. And no matter what I say, or how many beautiful words I use, or how many elaborate pictures I try to paint with my words, what I'm really saying behind them will be felt by everyone. In fact, as you watch this TV program with me this morning, I'm speaking to you with one language. But on another language, between my words and the gaps between my words, there's a whole other speech going on. And if you're very sensitive and very intuitive inside, you'll be able to feel that speech. That is the most important one in life. Never follow my words. Never believe my words. Follow my silences, the gaps, the pauses between the words. It is there that the message is. And you see, right speech is a communion. What we often seek is just communication, and the only reason that we talk or say anything is usually to have some sort of dominance, some sort of rapport with someone else that we're speaking with. Observe your conversations. Are you speaking to people and at people? Most of the time that we're talking, we're trying to get something over, and it's a subtle form of trying to control another person or control a situation with our words. And as long as we are speaking like that, we are speaking very ineffectively, because what's really happening deep down inside of us through right speech is that we're conveying our insecurity. Because whenever I'm trying to control a situation, verbally or physically, the speech that's really being said inside of me is that I'm feeling insecure, that I'm not feeling very good about myself. And if I'm not feeling very good about myself, that will translate into everything that I do. So what I'd like to say to many of you is drop your affirmations and your denials and start beginning to take a deep look at what right speech is all about. Because what we are saying from within ourselves is the most important thing in life. If you begin to look at your life a little bit, you'll begin to see that a lot of our living has to do with noise. I spend an hour a day sitting very quietly with no one in my home, just listening. And the thing that I have found in my personal life is that I make a lot of noise in the day that is totally unnecessary. Have you ever noticed that about yourself? That a lot of the things that you and I say don't need to be said at all, and the fact that we are nothing but very noisy people. And because of the noise level of us, we never really get to hear what's happening. Right speech comes with right listening too, in a funny kind of way, because when I am speaking rightly within myself, I am listening as well. And now I begin to hear, see, and speak in a very intimate way. And the most beautiful thing that can ever happen in our life is something that I call intimacy. That's what right speech is all about. It's a form of intimacy. If we would seek less communication and more communion, we would find a drastic difference in the way things are. Again, I want you to remember, when I'm trying to communicate with you, I'm trying to sway you. When I'm trying to really speak with you on a deep spiritual level, I'm not trying to convince you, move you, or motivate you, manipulate you. I'm seeking to do something so beautiful and so intimate, so fragile, so vulnerable, that it transcends anything that we've ever known in our life. It's called intimacy. And I find in most of us that the thing that frightens us the most is to become intimate with another person. Because when we do, we become very vulnerable. And yet, Buddha's teaching is very possible and very probable in our life, that we will not find enlightenment until right speech and vulnerability are allowed in us. I'm going to be right back with some more insight. Please don't go away.
Just believe we can be everything. Aspire.
Welcome back to our program. You know, Aspire, we try very hard to make it something that speaks to you at another level. But even in this media, in our program, maybe sometimes we even get a little too noisy. I'm sitting here in Quail Gardens, and as I close my eyes, you can hear the waterfall, you can hear the birds singing. And if you're real sensitive, you can even feel the trees moving. And there is a language that's being spoken, which is right speech, which is the ultimate language. It's called silence. In Zen, one of the great koans that is given to a student is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? There is a sound to silence, and it is the ultimate speech of life, because the universe does not work off of the noise that you and I live. The universe lives in silence. And if you and I can listen to the speech of silence in tolerance and compassion, we can change our life. You know how we get there? It's through being vulnerable. And what I have found in my own life that is really startling to me, and at first so startling it hurt, is that the way you really can listen to the silence of life and the speech of life as it's being given to us in is through our feeling nature. Not through our emotions, but our feelings. Remember, there's a vast difference between emotions and feelings. Emotions are always noisy and passionate. When we are living by our emotions, we live by tremendous passion. We'll live in the passion of greed, of desire, of defensiveness, of sexuality. And with those working within us, we are the noisiest. We're like a gong that's always gonging around and clapping and making noises. And we walk around in this noise and this confusion and this dust. But when we're working in our feelings, something else begins to happen. Feelings are different. They run in a continuum, and there is no middle, no beginning, and no end. They never end. They don't have conclusions. And we touch our feeling nature through meditation. And this is why I urge all of you who watch Aspire or come here to the center and study to practice meditation, meditation, meditation. Because if you don't practice in your meditation, you won't learn the language. And the language is first to listen. You can't understand until you listen. I have nothing to impart to you. What can I say? What can I say that is greater than where I am right now, here? I'm kind of in a little forest and everything is happening, and if I'm very quiet and I listen, I hear it. What more could I ever say to you? And the funny part about TV is that you have to say something, or people turn you off, and maybe what is really important is what I'm not saying to you and what I'm feeling inside. And if you're very, very quiet inside, you'll pick up on that message. And that creates an intimacy between you and me. And now we have something very special. We have something that most people don't have, an intimacy that bears understanding. Understanding between people is very rare, and that's what Buddha wanted for us. That was one of his major teachings, to have understanding through silence. With that in mind, we begin to change our whole life. Now we're not interested in what we see. Now we're not interested in what's around us. We are more interested in the compassion of silence that lives within us. As I've said to you so many times before, the difference between a lie and a truth is about 3 inches. It's the distance between the eye and the ear. If I look at life with my eyes, I'm going to be a very noisy person. Because as I look at life with my eyes, I become analytical, I become logical, I become theoretical, I become reasonable. But when I close my eyes and I listen with my inner ear, right speech occurs. I begin to hear that universal language of compassion, of harmony, of love. And one of the first things that life is trying to tell me is, Gregory, everything is right where it needs to be. You don't need to be changing the world. You don't need to be changing other people. And you don't need to be changing yourself. If you just listen, the very speech of life, the very compassion of life will change you, and it becomes a natural thing in your own living. So practice a little bit of right speech this week by not talking so much, by observing how noisy you are, and maybe by being able to change your whole life by listening. The ironic thing about right speech is that it has nothing to do with what we say. Right speech is more what we don't say. The ironic thing about it is it just happens in us. Please be aware in your communications with other people what your motive is. Because in that motive and in that moment is right speech. If you're trying to sway somebody or change them, you're missing the opportunity of Gautama Buddha's great teaching. I'm going to be back in a minute with some how-to, so please don't go away. Welcome back. I want to give you some how-tos on right speech. First how-to is really very simple and yet very difficult. Sit alone every day for a while. Get used to what it is like to hear no thing. That is very difficult for us. The most frightening thing in the world that people face is being alone with themselves, and that's why it's easier to go to a class or watch this program and be filled with all sorts of words than it is to be wordless. And I'm telling you, the most beautiful things in your life are wordless things, empty things. The most beautiful thing in life is emptiness itself. The very thing that frightens us the most is emptiness. When people say that their life is hell, or their life is difficult, or their life is horrible, they'll say, I have an empty feeling in my life. Good. Now go with the empty feeling. What is it like? If you and I spend time sitting alone and quiet, just listening, we'll know what right speech is, because it's being given to us all the time. And now something else will start to occur within us, and that is something very unique that most people never honor within themselves. We'll know our feelings. Feelings are not something we honor. We honor emotions and we honor great thoughts, but we never honor feelings. I have just begun to discover just a few of the feelings that I have. It's opened up a brand new world to me. I thought before that passion and reason were something that you balanced, and that made your life meaningful, and that gave you insight, right speech. It doesn't. Silence gives it to us, and feelings arise out of a silence. And silence with feelings is in itself right speech. Your feelings have a verbiage and a wordage that is trying to speak to you right now, this very moment as you are listening to me. And after you're done with this program, if you would just turn it off, turn off the TV, and just sit and listen. Your mind will ramble on. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? This seems so illogical. But if you stay with yourself, you will discover that you have feelings, and your feelings communicate to life. And when my feelings are there, I build this intimacy with life. I start to connect with life. And now life isn't out here and I'm here. I find that life is here and here. There's a communion that is taking place. And that's what real prayer is all about. Prayer is not uttering words, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. That's all verbiage. That is not right speech. Right speech is living that prayer. Living it silently, not talking about it, it's living it. And the funny part about right speech is that it has more to do with listening than it does with talking. And that leads me to my next point that's really important. When you're speaking with somebody, whoever you're talking with, stop a moment, ask yourself, watch, what am I saying? Is what I'm saying what I'm feeling? You'll find that most of the time, what you and I are saying has nothing to do with what we feel. We're trying to persuade somebody, control a situation, or make something happen. And all the time we're doing that, we're missing. We're missing intimacy. We're missing compassion. We're missing touching each other. We're not even involved in each other. We're just trying to control each other and be cute and smart and quippy. You can spend your whole life being cute, smart, and quippy and miss love and compassion, understanding and depth. What good is it to be so smart and quippy and whippy that you miss out on what's really happening around you? So rather than trying to communicate, to motivate, or trying to supplicate somebody, try within yourself to be intimate with that person. That means communicate with your feelings. Don't try to persuade them. Try to be with them. Don't try to move them. Try to sit with them in your stillness, in your silence. That's when intimacy develops. That's when love develops. And all of a sudden, from out of nowhere in our own life, we find a new meaning. And now life will start responding to how we feel, not what we say. That will be the most powerful point in your life, when life is really giving to you what you feel. Now, all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, you can really say to yourself, I'm in love with life. Because being in love with life simply means I'm with life, totally and completely, with no hesitation and no doubt. There's nothing between me and living except what is. The spaces and the gaps between my words. The spaces and the gaps between things. That's where life is contained, and that is the deep teaching of Buddha, of right speech. Thanks for being with me. Namaste. Welcome back to my house. I love to read your mail, as I've told you before, and I have a real interesting letter that I'd like to share with you, and I'll try to answer it. It's a long one. It says, meditation frightens me. It seems to me that most of these people in monasteries and people at Zen centers are not very productive members of society. What would happen if the whole world suddenly did nothing but meditate all day long? I'd like that. Can I still be married, have a family, and work while being active in meditation? I think this person has kind of a Western point of view about meditation. First of all, meditation frightens me, they say. Of course it frightens you, because it's the unknown and the unknowable in the logical mind. So of course it's going to frighten us. Whatever we can't control, we don't understand, and then it frightens us. Meditation kind of cleans us out a little bit. It allows us to see both the dark side and the darker side of ourselves. And sometimes that's a little frightening. It scares us. But, you know, it's not something to be afraid of. It's something to look into and to heal. Then this person says, to me it seems that most of these people in monasteries and Zen centers aren't very productive members of society. What would happen if the whole world did nothing but meditate all day long? Well, first of all, the world isn't going to meditate all day long, that we know. And I don't know if these people are any less productive than anyone else. Who's more productive? The one that's in his lab building a nuclear bomb, or pushing and working real hard and getting a heart attack? Or one who spends a part of their life and their day sitting still and quiet? And the last part, how can I still be married, have a family, and be active in meditation? It's simple. You take 15 minutes a day and you meditate, and you bring that into your day. You bring that quiet into your day. You bring that clarity into your day. Work with the Vipassana meditation. Your whole life will change. Food will taste better. The world will be more beautiful. You will be more clear, simply because you took some time in your day for some silence. That's what the world would be like. It would be very quiet, and maybe then we would be able to find ourselves. I want to leave you with these words from Buddha, one of the great living masters of our time. Be a light unto yourself. That is the theme of our program. Next week we'll be continuing in right action on the Eightfold Path. I hope you'll plan to be with us. Thanks for being here. Namaste.